On August 12th, 2014, an announcement was made during Sony's press conference at Gamescom that would change the world forever. An unknown developer named 7780 showed off a demo for a game called PT and announced it was available on the PlayStation Store for everyone to play. It had the player exploring the hallway of a house in the dead of night. Once they reach the end, they are brought back to the start, and with each loop, things start to change and shit gets spooky after this ghosty gal makes an appearance. What made things difficult was it was a very cryptic game in terms of what the player needed to do to progress, but people fucking loved how utterly creepy and unsettling it was. It also had people going, what is this mysterious game? And who is this studio with a hard-on for numbers? After players figured out how to beat this convoluted little title, they discovered something beautiful. PT was actually a teaser for Silent Hills. It would be directed and designed by Hideo Kojima and his team, and they will be collaborating with the sweetest horror man on earth, film director Guillermo del Toro.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen.
To add icing to this fucking delicious cake, the main character will be none other than the Walking Dead icon Norman Reedus. People were hyped as fuck for Silent Hills, but we all know how that went. Even though we would never get to play Silent Hills and PT was eventually removed from the PlayStation Store, many devs were inspired by its design and setting. This opened the floodgates to games known as PT clones, which were basically games set in a house ripped straight out of House of Leaves. The most famous of these titles was Allison Road, touted by fans and media upon its announcement as a spiritual successor to PT, and it looked damn promising, and many people thought they would finally get to play something that was similar to the Silent Hills game that was ripped from their hands. But being compared to the most infamous cancelled horror game of all time is like entering the house from The Grudge. All you are doing is asking for trouble. So in this latest episode of Cancelled Horror Games, we'll be taking a look at Allison Road, from its initial announcement and Kickstarter campaign, and the events after, to its demise, rebirth, and second demise. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that you can support the channel on Patreon for as little as $1. You will gain access to extra content, Q&A videos, and can vote in a poll to determine my next video game review. All of that and a link to my extremely spooky Discord will be in the description and in the pinned comment. And with all that, let's get it going. In the far distant past of the 30th of June 2015, a developer named Lilith Limited released a 14-minute video which showed the world some prototype gameplay of their upcoming title, Allison Road. The basic story outline for the game was published on the official Kickstarter page. Taking place on a quiet street in the suburbs of Manchester in the UK,
Jumpy-doo, patent leather shoe.
The player character wakes up one night inside a house without any recollections of prior events. The core of the plot involves the player exploring the house and beyond to uncover what happened to their family, all the while being stalked by something in the dark. The plot outline posed one simple question to the player. What would you do if you couldn't tell what's real and what's not? If all of this has given you some Silent Hill 2 vibes, you are on the money. Lilith outlined some of the games they drew inspiration from, and one of them was good old Silent Hill 2. More specifically, James Sunderland's perilous journey of self-discovery through Silent Hill and the search of his late wife.
How can you sit there and eat pizza?
They also referenced Resident Evil 2 and Dead Space as inspirations, which fulfills the McDonald triad of horror games to be inspired by. Straight away, this gameplay demo wears its upper middle class hallway simulator influence on its sleeve. Aesthetically, it's as though Norman Reedus got out of the PT loop-de-loop and was able to explore more areas of his house. Everything here is going for that finding the fear in the mundane vibe. The house looks modern with its sleek furniture, cluttered shelves, dirty kitchen, and just overall feels lived in. The player could pick up items and examine them with little voice lines further fleshing out the potential story and raising little questions that would likely be answered later on in the game.
A wedding magazine?
And of course, the prototype gameplay couldn't help but reference PT, even in its short runtime.
Dad was such a drag?
Dad was such a drag.
I understood that reference.
All of that is mixed with long hallways providing sharp turns into rooms, never allowing the player to get a peekaboo before entering. It gave that feeling like shit was gonna pop up and boo all over your face and chest whenever you turn the camera. All this was made all the more spooky with the moody lighting and sound design. The entire house was dimly lit, but not in a way that felt unnatural. Instead, it felt relatable, and that is extremely important considering the environment is really trying to find fear in the relatable. You know when you are walking around late at night in your house, and even though you know you have done it hundreds of times during the day and felt completely fine, for some reason, when the lights go out, all of a sudden your house becomes spooky? Once familiar hallways and rooms become alien and fraught with danger? Well, that is how the lighting is executed in Allison Road. It makes the house just feel much more sinister purely based on the atmosphere created by the lights. Creator of Allison Road, Christian Keltzer, even used this kind of situation in his own home as an inspiration for the game's setting and lighting.
Plus the fact that I live in a house that creaks and cracks at like the slightest bit of wind and has a distinct atmosphere of horror when it's dark at night really inspired me to set the game in a house.
In terms of actual mechanics though, the prototype gameplay showed the bare minimum. The player would have wandered around, examined shit and tried to uncover sneaky secrets. We don't see any potential puzzles or enemy encounters, albeit one short moment at the end where a creepy ghost girl pops up. How she or other enemies would have worked and what mechanics would have been available to the player to deal with such encounters was not shown. The devs did say stealth would play an important role, so if you have played any first-person horror game from the early 2000s, which featured no combat but instead had you hiding in closets and under beds because that's heaps fun, you pretty much get the gist of what this game was going to offer. Lilith did kind of dive into what mechanics would be present in the game on their Kickstarter page, but even that was pretty vague. There would be a massive emphasis on investigating locations and the objects within them. However, the exploration and general pacing of such activity would have been tied to a time mechanic. Players would need to keep an eye on the clock because the horrors of the game would come out at night. This does suggest a day and night cycle, but how exactly that would work and whether there would be any danger at all during the night or the danger would simply be increased at night wasn't discussed or shown in the gameplay footage. Nonetheless, this was a pretty unique idea, and I can't really think of a horror game besides Dead Rising that tried to do something like this. Another core aspect of the game would have been its use of sound, which is honestly a massively underappreciated part of what makes horror games so special. We didn't get to hear much in the gameplay footage besides some ambient and environmental effects, and of course a radio, cause PT, but the Kickstarter included a section dedicated to sound. It also included 3 short tracks called Guilt, Memories, and Haunted, and don't you worry, the Silent Hill inspirations are also present in the score. The songs Guilt and Memories sound like those more ambient, foggy, and dreamlike tracks found in Silent Hill 2. Lots of synth piano with notes being held for a long time, accompanied by strings that really elevate the eerie but also pleasant soundscape found in the work of Akira Yamaoka. I believe these tracks would have accompanied the more exploration-focused sections of the game. The song Haunted, however, shows the more spooky side of the score, which is obvious considering it's called Haunted. Much like similar tracks found in Silent Hill, this song uses odd and otherworldly sounds mixed in with some ambient strings to invoke a feeling of dread and discomfort. A real nice touch is the use of whispering that flows between the left and right channels, which achieves the, and here we go again with this word, feeling as though something is behind you, whispering in your ear. This shit is really well done, but also doesn't do anything super unique with its inspirations. It is your run-of-the-mill Silent Hill soundtrack, but since the music in that series is so damn fucking good, that means this score would have been pretty good too. In an interview with IGN, Chris commented on the state of horror games at the time and how Allison Road would be different. Now, you've got to remember with that little head of yours, games like Slender the 8 Pages, Five Nights at Freddy's, Amnesia, Outlast, and games of that formula were all making waves but tended to follow a similar format. That being, boo, I scared yous, popping up on the screen and startling players.
Allison Road isn't about excessive gore or jump scare horror. It's more the type of horror that leaves you deeply unsettled, but equally, you just want to continue to find out exactly what's going on. Peeking around every corner carefully, listening to every sound. Of course, it'll get your heart pounding on occasion and hopefully you'll be terrified in the end, but it'll leave you with a really memorable experience.
Chris and his team wanted to help bring horror back to the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 era. More story and atmosphere driven games with less focus on action, jump scares and gore. And with all that, Lilith launched their Kickstarter with a goal of $309,906. Lilith said the game would come out on PC first, and then Mac, Linux, consoles, and VR. Ports would depend on the Kickstarter meeting the specific stretch goal. The playtime would be about 5 to 6 hours long, with a planned release date of the end of 2018. Tiers started at $8, and most featured pretty stock standard rewards, including copies of the game, backers' names in the credits, a digital soundtrack, etc, etc. One cool reward was found in the $305 tier, where your name would be carved into a tree set along the player's path in the game. This is pretty sweet, but I can imagine how immersion shattering it would be as a player to walk past lots and lots of trees with initials on them. Either a lot of horny teens were here, or lots of people supported the Kickstarter. Another was at the $386 tier, where backers could have a photo of their choosing in the game's house. Subject to approval, of course, since you know some dude would send in a dick pic or something. But as the dollars climbed, the rewards got pretty damn ambitious. At $777, backers could send in original music which would be featured in the game. Again, subject to approval. This is cool, but I can't help but imagine dropping that much money to maybe have your song in the game is a bit of a gamble. But let's keep climbing higher. Lots of the higher tiers really focus on the backer adding content to the game, which is pretty enticing as a horror fan, but also sounds a bit too good to be true. At the $1,543 tier, backers could record their own unique phone message that would be crucial to the story, which is pretty cool but not worth the price of admission. One crazy tier cost backers $3,856, which would reward you with working with the devs to design your own scare. This tier actually had one backer, and I'm so sorry my guy, even if this game wasn't cancelled, dropping that much cash would have been a bad investment. Granted, you clearly got money to burn, so maybe donate it to a charity or something, just literally anything else. But the highest tier cost $7,850. Backers on this tier would be able to travel to the UK to be one of the first people in the entire flat world to play the final version of the game. You would think dropping nearly $8,000 would also include the travel costs, but you would be wrong. Sure, backers would get all the rewards from previous tiers, but you are basically paying some serious cash to play a game before anyone else. Luckily, no one was irresponsible enough to back this one. A reward that was promised to be included in many tiers was something called the Lucid Dreams experience. This would have been a game that would play like Allison Road, like a preview, set in the same universe but would not be part of the main narrative. That way, the game wouldn't be spoiled. Lilith said they planned for the Lucid Dream experience to be released to backers by mid-2016. I couldn't find any more info about this, but guess what? There was also more extra game shit for the backers. This time it was more of an augmented reality game, or ARG. It was known as The Hunter. Lilith described it as a special Kickstarter backer-only game, which would appear on the fundraising page. Devs would send clues and puzzles to backers via email, and once these were solved, it would provide a lot more detail about the backstory of the game. Backers could also win one-of-a-kind collectibles. Again, we have no idea about the specifics regarding this little bonus, but it was a great way of growing the community and getting them to engage with the creators and each other, while building hype for the game. The good news train kept chugga-lugging along with the unveiling of the game's second location on the 10th of October, during an interview with none other than the internet's favourite punching bag, IGN. With 12 days left in the Kickstarter, Lilith showed off a forest surrounded by marshland. When I first heard about Allison Road and its PT influence, I thought the game would solely take place in the house, and the devs would just do some otherworldly shit to keep the environment fresh. So it was a pleasant surprise to hear the scope of the game would be much larger. Project leader Chris Kelser said exterior environments such as the forest would have an intricate connection to the story of Allison Road. Chris also said the different environments allow for a different type of game design, so the player would encounter a different type of horror compared to the house setting. One example of this played on the familiar fear of being lost in the woods at night. The uncanny shapes and sounds surround you, but their origins are always unclear, leading to paranoia or the feeling of something or someone stalking you.
All things considered, it's obviously only in your head for the most part, but we really want to play with audio/visual cues, your imagination, and primal fears like a threat to your life, isolation, abandonment, etc., to make it a truly memorable experience.
All of this sounds cool, and I absolutely love horror taking place in forests. It just always gives me the vibe of the Blair Witch Project, and I severely fuck with that. But Chris said something that I think really makes the expanded environments all the more erotic and arousing.
When you are in the house, all you want to do is get out. When you are out, all you want to do is get back into the safety of the house.
Oh yes, very tantalizing indeed. With 9 days left and plenty of buzz,
You like jazz?
4,482 people backed the game on Kickstarter, and Lilith raised $118,165. Things were looking good. We got another successful Kickstarter right here.
Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations!
But on the 13th of October 2015, Lilith abruptly cancelled their fundraising endeavour. But why? From the outside, things were going strong. Well, that is where these guys come into the mix. Lilith announced on their Kickstarter they had scored a deal with Worms publisher Team 17. They would be working under the publisher's independent games label and be provided with the money needed to complete the game and focus on their vision, without the restrictions of a tight budget holding them back.
Working with Team 17 will give us a chance to make our game unhindered creatively, but at the same time will give us the resources, support, and experience that only a 25-year-old studio can give.
But what about all those rewards promised to Kickstarter backers? Well, all Lilith had to say about that was they will look at ways outside of Kickstarter that will allow backers to be involved in the game at a later date, which is pretty vague and concerning, but feedback from backers at the time was pretty positive. No one seemed to mind that the Kickstarter was done and dusted, because they wanted the game to be as good as it could possibly be, and thought the partnership with Team 17 would ensure that would happen. Lilith said they would be going very quiet and focus on making the video game, and that is what they did. A little too quiet if you ask me.
Be very, very quiet.
That was until June 5th, 2016, when Lilith posted something on Twitter that broke more hearts than Anthony Fantano's review of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
But that's just my opinion.
Hi all. Sadly, Allison Road had to be cancelled. Statement to come in the next few days. Thanks for all your support, and it's very sad that it came to this.
Lilith went quiet for a few weeks until they gave an official statement on their Facebook. They said themselves and Team 17 reached a mutual agreement to end their collaboration, but even this statement didn't really explain why the game was cancelled. They said some things just pan out differently than expected, as game development and publishing have so many layers of complexity. Vague as fuck, but a statement nonetheless, and a reason that is pretty common in video game development. Team 17 eventually released their own statement a few days later, and guess what? We still have no idea what happened. In fact, they basically repeated the same thing. Video game development and publishing are complex. We reached a mutual agreement and all that jazz. Lilith could have gone back to Kickstarter, but since they struggled to reach their initial goal, they decided not to. And with that, the once promising Allison Road was cancelled.
I'm actually really happy to be able to announce that Allison Road will continue.
Shit, fuck. I didn't expect this. What am I gonna do? Compose yourself. Just act like nothing happened. Just act like nothing fucking happened. Okay, wow!
Wow, you're so dominant.
On August 23rd, 2016, Chris went and did a big old surprise sausage and told IGN the game is coming back. If you were keen to find out why it was initially cancelled, I got some bad news bears for you, as he barely talked about it. But Chris did say he had to do a bit of soul searching after his partnership with Team 17 ended, and he needed to make a call about what to do next with Allison Road.
After the setback, I took a bit of a break from working on it and reevaluated all the work that had been done so far, the whole journey, so to speak. I started making a few, in my opinion, necessary changes to the story and the flow, little bits and pieces here and there, and before I knew it, it sort of naturally came back to life.
He also revealed the game would be developed under a new studio called Far From Home, which he owned with his wife. But the days of Chris working with a team would be a thing of the past, as he decided to move forward on his lonesome. He was confident he could continue the game by himself, as it had been a solo project for quite a while until he decided to get more help.
For our gameplay trailer, I did all of the modeling, texturing, shaders, lighting, etc., and thankfully a lot of the mechanics are already implemented from the previous development phase, so I can comfortably take the game forward by myself.
Chris said when development did get to a point where he needed to add new features or mechanics, or if some older stuff needed to be reworked, he would look for help. The one burning question on everyone's lips was very simple. When would the game actually come out? Well, Chris did not provide an answer, because as for now, Allison Road was a one-person project, which meant progress would be a bit slower, but he was confident that the game would be back. But that was in 2016, and it is now 2020, and I don't know about you, but I haven't played Allison Road at all in the past 4 years. So what the hell happened? Is Allison Road actually gonna come out? Well, by the looks of things, the chances of this game getting released are pretty slim. The Allison Road Kickstarter page has been long since abandoned, which makes sense considering it was cancelled, but at least it still exists. The same can't be said for the Allison Road website or their official Facebook page. Both of these lead to links telling you these pages that once brought horror fans joy are now dead. And Chris hasn't updated fans or media outlets about the progress of the game. All these signs point to Allison Road no longer being in active development, though no official statement has been released. So if Chris hasn't been working on Allison Road, what is he doing? Well, he has been doing a lot, mainly working as a freelance concept artist for Marvel, working on films such as Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. This can all be seen on his online portfolio, so I'm glad Homeboy's been flexing those creative muscles of his, and judging by both his work on Allison Road and the Marvel films, he's really fucking good at what he does. But also on his online portfolio, lingering in a faraway tab, there is Allison Road. So maybe Chris is still working on it, and maybe one day the game will come back to life. And if it does, I will happily make my first ever uncancelled horror game video. But until that day comes, Allison Road will remain in the abyss and simply exist as yet another promising horror game we will never get to play. And with that, you have reached the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode in the cancelled horror game series. If you like this video, go on and like it, and subscribe, and share your opinions on Allison Road. Were you hyped for it? Were you sad when it, got cancelled, or did you not know it even existed? Big thank you to Painticus for lending his beautiful and sultry voice to this video of mine. If you like what I do, honestly, you're gonna fucking love what he does. He does a lot of videos on horror games, but has a really good series on Lovecraftian horror games that I honestly recommend you watch. You guys should all go over to his channel and subscribe. He's nearly hit 1,000 subs, and he honestly deserves it so fucking much. So, Painticus, thanks man, I really appreciate it. You are really good egg. You know that? Good egg. Big thank you to Witch Bitch for yet again editing this script. It has taken a lot off my mind and I really appreciate it. If you want to support the channel even further and help it grow, consider contributing to my Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you'll get access to Sunderland's Backlog, which is a video series where I play games in my backlog and give my little first impressions, early access to the next video, and a tech shout out at the end of every video. At my $3 tier, you'll get access to all the previous tiers and a monthly Q&A video where you'll get to ask me questions and I'll get to answer them. And lastly, for $5 a month, you'll get access to all the previous tiers, an audio shout out at the end of every video, and you'll get to vote in a poll to determine my next review. Big thanks to Colby Ball, Devin John Malone, Joey Monster, Marlo and Dotus, Randolph Sandolph, Sam Barclay, and Slide of Tongue for supporting the channel. You guys are fucking awesome and I love you all. Hope everyone's staying safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!